Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Testimony of a testament to the resilience of generations of Black Americans who kept their eyes set on the nation's North Star. That North Star was the idea that we're all created equal in the image of God and deserve to be treated equally throughout our lives.
Well, that's President Biden at an early Juneteenth celebration. And this morning, they don't know it yet, but producer Hannah and John Marsh and Brian Hauswirth will join me in imitating Joe Biden the entire morning. Welcome in.
We already do that
Missouri.
sometimes.
We're going to celebrate. We're going to have a good day today. And we're going to have Chris Arps in. Chris Arps is going to be with 6:35. And then Pat Thomas is going to be with 7:30. This guy is just fallen out of the rails. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
As long as no one messes in their britches, I think we're good.
We're going to be talking
present company included.
We're going to be talking with Chris Arps at 6:35 about this whole effort among the Biden's the campaign, and people insiders are talking about losing a big swath of the African-American vote, what it means, this effort yesterday at the Juneteenth celebration to try to claw it back. Just unbelievable how he's failing with the critical elements of the coalition. Chris will be with us at 6:35. Pat Thomas to talk about, she'll be in studio to talk about a state party meeting that was here in Columbia over the weekend. And Brad Jones, I always look forward to our visit with Brad at 8:08-ish, the second Tuesday of the month, because that's when the National Federation of Independent Business folks come out with their, with their sort of bellwether or their barometer of what's going on in the small business community. I know many of you are either owners or managers or work at small businesses. It's a thriving enterprise community in mid-Missouri throughout.
I think they call it their success survey.
Yes, and some of the surveys recently, John, have not reflected a lot of optimism about success. No matter what the administration and the high-level economists want to say, I think everyone that is living everyday America, I think, has a different feeling, don't you?
Oh, for sure. And, around here in this neck of the woods, if you don't work for a small business, you sure deal with them every day.
You bet. But, I have to tell you, there is a real something about the size and the, just the ethical integrity of Mid-Missouri and the people you work with. The folks that, advertise on the station. You call up, you get a little service done, you call. There's something about the magic of this sort of, it's not really total rural, not urban. It's sort of a mix of, a nice size community in Mid-Missouri. And I just think, as opposed to my former days in St. Louis, where, man, you call a contractor and they're doing you a favor, Yeah. And you just get the feeling when you deal with small business people in Mid-Missouri, there's just a different feeling. Like, hey, thanks for asking me to do business with you. What can I do to help you? You just get a totally different feel, and I think it's great. I wish everyone all across these 50 states, or was it 57 according to Barack Obama, conducted business like that. We'll see what Brad says. He's the director of the Missouri NFIB. See what he says at 8:08. So there is a lot going on. Of course, the Hunter arguments are over. It's in the hands of the jury. I guess they got, about an hour worth of some deliberation in yesterday and went home. And they'll be back at it today. Hunter didn't take the stand. You think that was a mistake?
No.
Yeah, I don't either. I was not surprised to see that he didn't.
Yeah.
I was how credible he would be to the jurors.
I guess the only argument for that, the only play there would be the sympathy card, right? Because wasn't it 11 of the 12 jurors said that they either had experience with or very closely connected with someone who had experience with drugs. And if you've ever been, one of our very, very good friends from back in the St. Louis days in church, they actually lost a son to a drug overdose. And man, when you know people that struggle with relatives or personal struggles with that, it really, it does bring a lot of it tugs at your heartstrings when you hear the challenges that people go through.
Puts a face to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. But nonetheless, I think the problem is when, I don't know, if I'm a juror and Abby Lowell, the attorney, the defense attorney, is trying to somehow spin some kind of a yarn that, well, at the very moment when he signed the federal gun application, at that moment, he took a little respite from his addiction. He wasn't addicted then. He wasn't actually doing a line of coke with one hand and signing the paper with another. So, jury, he wasn't truly, legally, technically, and I am a Philadelphia lawyer, he wasn't, I think I would be really put off by that. I mean, what do you think, I'm dumb, Abby? Come on. Do you think I'm stupid? That's the problem. I mean, if you were going to pull the empathy string, you go all the way in and you say, yeah, he did it. He was out of his mind. Of course he was out of his mind. He was on drugs. What do you expect? The insanity defense. That's what I would have played. I don't know. But that's why I'm not a lawyer.
We don't have one present this morning.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of that, Stephanie is out on assignment. She will be back Thursday. And we'll check in with her because by then I imagine I can't imagine they're going to be deliberating until then. We'll have a verdict by then. And interestingly, we'll see. I'm interested if they're going to somehow change the conviction, or can't they do that? Can they sort of downsize things or change it somehow? I don't know. You hear about juries doing that from some time to time. So Hunter's on tap. Sam Alito, Justice Alito has himself in trouble. Well, his wife and he were recorded by a fake conservative. There's a gal, Lauren Windsor is her name. She's a fake conservative. And last year she went to this Supreme Court Historical Society meeting and she poses, I guess you can become a paying dues member of this society for, I don't know, $500 or something. And that just gets you into the pre-dinner. If you got to spend more to get into the dinner with them. But you can rub shoulders with these people before the dinner. And last year, she sort of posed as a conservative and was talking about the polarization and Justice Alito, what are we going to do? Well, this year she did it again, and there's some interesting sound on that. We will get to that. That's fascinating.
It's a weird story.
It is. But, I have to say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We often play the Project Veritas or James O'Keefe. He's got his own group now. When they get a date with someone or they somehow get dinner with someone. They did it with the Planned Parenthood people. They've done it with people in the Biden administration. They get a few drinks in them. They get them to let their hair down, and then the microphone is the body cam's on. The things they say. We've seen it with school officials about DEI in school and indoctrinating the kids. And I mean, they come in clean. So I guess if it's okay for us to snoop out and expose what's going on the left in the deep state and other progressive places, I guess it's okay for it to happen to people on our side of the fence, which would be Justice Sam Alito. And Nancy Pelosi, too. That's an interesting story. Nancy is caught now. They've released some J6 video, actually from the time when she's in the car. I guess they're taking her to an off-site place, and she as much admitted that she sort of blew it in the security.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
No, that is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
So she takes responsibility for not having them prepare for more. And she did have, as the Speaker of the House, some authority over determining the preparations for that event. I mean, people knew there was going to be a protest. They knew there was going to be a march. And a lot of folks are saying, look, this is a smoking gun. This is Nancy Pelosi admitting, she's trying to, why didn't we have more? Well, Nancy, there's pretty good evidence, and Lynn Cheney, by the way, suppressed a lot of that evidence and did not let it come to light during the J6 trial, that there were requests for that from Mark Meadows and out of the White House, who was chief of staff at that point. So I don't know. There's a lot of firestorm going on. Brian, I love when they release these tapes, don't you? I think it's beautiful.
Well, it is interesting for sure, and I know the committee. I've seen some stuff that committee has been. Various congressional committees have released things, so we'll see what happens on that.
But they didn't release all the tapes.
No,
and that I think is where you get in trouble. Release the whole enchilada.
Sure.
I think it's funny that we still call them tapes.
Well,
digital files,
videos. I don't know.
Yeah, that's. You're right. You got me there.
We're thinking of Watergate, but yeah, exactly.
That was interesting. I'd like to hear some of the ones from Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell that were supposedly on some of the tapes from then too, and wonder if they related the same thing that Nancy Pelosi did. That basically they were caught with their pants down.
Yeah, you're
when
right.
It all happened.
Right.
It was like, oh wow, people are upset about this. We had no clue.
I think there was a lot of warning from many avenues that there was the potential for more than just a peaceful protest starting blocks away, we saw what happened. So the governor has rejected clemency for a convict.
Yeah, this is a high-profile case. John and I remember it very well. Our listeners in Jefferson City on KWS will know it well. The murders, plural, were horrific. The victims were killed with a submachine gun. This is was a well-known, and at one time, John knows this, a well-known Jefferson City firefighter who is the suspect in this case, David Hosier. He's scheduled to be executed tonight. The governor has denied clemency in the case. The governor said some things in his denying clemency that have never been reported before, including, I've heard it, but I never had heard anybody say it publicly, that Hosier stalked and harassed Angela Gilpin. And one point I want to make very important here, Randy, is that Hosier was convicted of killing his ex-lover, and we talked about that, Angela Gilpin. He was never put on trial for killing Gilpin's husband, Rodney. However, as the governor points out, it was implied that in there, and I think there were a variety of reasons they saved that case, but they never ended up taking him to trial for that. But barring intervention from the courts or a federal judge, he will be executed tonight. But it was a huge case. This guy was captured in Oklahoma, and they allegedly found 15 firearms in his vehicle, bulletproof vest, and a crowbar. And he told Oklahoma authorities to shoot him and get it over with.
This was just a case of fatal attraction, right? I mean, they'd had a romantic involvement, and she put an end to it, and then this was a jealous rage.
John?
Pretty much, yeah. That's what happened. At least we understood from this that he was going out with her, and she ended the relationship and got back with her husband and all. I remember being told at the scene by the emergency crews who cleaned up the hallway outside that West Side Jefferson City apartment that they had to get a shovel to clean up the spent shell casings. There were so many.
That's right. That's exactly right. And in the court filings, I covered the U.S. Supreme Court, covered the Missouri Supreme Court hearing on his case in 2019, and they talked about this affair. Allegedly, the affair ended. Angela reconciles with her husband, Rodney. Hosier breaks into the apartment, but John's right about the shell casings. And and it was a submachine gun. And then, like I said, they were looking all over Jeff City for a while for him, but they found him in Oklahoma.
Holy cow. Man, Duncan, another state that appears to be in play as we start with the daily DC rundown. Well, Virginia, of course, being a suburb of DC, and I can tell you, my son lives in Arlington, and I can tell you it is a bastion of Democrat support. However, Virginia at large may be in play, still in the polls, single digits now, separating Trump and Biden. But as Glenn Youngkin said, Virginia may be in play. Other polls suggesting that Minnesota may be in play. Why did Donald Trump go to Nevada? Why did he have a super huge fundraising event in San Francisco with David Sachs? Why? It is because the momentum, is it more against Biden, more for Trump, or maybe a little bit of both, is putting states into play that I think heretofore have not been. The national
heretofore.
Awesome. However, well, I don't know. Once in a while, it's not as good as spoliation, but it's close. Now, but the national polls, however, are tightening a bit. So we have this interesting dynamic where if you look, and of course the left-wing media is all over some of the new the YouGov poll and the new CBS poll out saying that since Donald Trump's convictions on 34 trumped-up, silly, flim-flam accounting charges came down a week and a half ago, that in fact, some of the things have tightened, but that is on a national level. That's with mostly registered voters. I don't think that's really what we're talking about. It's going to be 22 to 25 counties in 5 or 6 states that will determine the election outcome. And of course, we'll be keeping our eye on that. In other news, I mentioned Sam Alito and his wife were recorded at an event, and this Lauren Windsor came up with some fascinating news where she caught him on tape basically talking. Here we go.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that the solution really is like winning the moral argument. Like, people in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that, to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
Okay. God forbid Sam Alito says he agrees with
From those powerful moments and painful moments with a better vision for ourselves.
Well, there was bumbling Joe Biden at the Juneteenth celebration yesterday. And to help us decipher and translate what bumbling Joe had to say is none other than our favorite guy from the East down the road there, Chris Arps. How you doing, Chris? Welcome in.
I'm doing really good, Randy. Dr. Tobler, I was going to ask you, what exactly did the president say there? I know you have the transcript right there in front of you, right?
I know. You know, we were joking about it as we came on. I said, we're all going to speak in Biden. We're all going to speak in these. And Chris Arps joins us now. Chris is on the air every evening in St. Louis from 4 to 6. I mean, it just. And then one of our listeners texted. He nailed it. He said, "Sounds like one of the best of Norm Crosby's moments." So I don't know.
You know, Dr. Tobin, I was watching something probably 6 or 7 years ago, a video of Joe Biden. It's amazing just his decline in a relatively short period of time. I mean, he sounded, like he had his faculties and could not sound like he was slurring his words, and just 5 or 6 years later,
just crazy. Yeah, I said Norm Macdonald is who I'm talking about. Sort of sounded a little Norm Macdonald-ish there. That's
I did.
And then there was the moment, and you wonder. Another listener, I think, has asked the question, Chris, that we're all asking. There was this moment where he froze. I guess there was a musical performance going on, and you see Kamala and her husband, and you see everyone clapping and getting into it. At first, he does a couple of claps that are not in meter, totally out of sync with everyone, and then he just stands there and freezes. I mean, I don't know whether he is going to make it to the finish line in November. Do you?
I don't, and I'm going to cut the president a little slack when it comes to the rhythm. White folks don't have a lot of rhythm, Dr. Tobler, so I'm going to cut him a little slack.
Now wait a minute. Okay, all right, Arps. All right, Arps.
He's not wrong.
Now wait a minute. Okay, now Arps, tomorrow I'm going to send you Hannah. Would you make a note? When Helene's going to co-host tomorrow, and I'm going to ask her. Helene attended many of the performances when I was with the Bob Cuban Brass up and down the river on the Admiral.
How many years ago was that?
During the disco days with the silk shirt, the bell bottoms, the platform shoes. And we were like the Temptations. I kid you not. I do have rhythm, Chris Arps. You may not believe it, but I've got rhythm.
No, Chris,
please.
Formulating a plan. It's like, Mr. President, we need to think of a dignified exit strategy. Is it the hunger for power? Is that what you're in political circles? You're in the highest political circles, Chris. You're around these people a lot. Yeah. Are these people, did they just literally get inebriated with swamp gas and they just are so full of ambition and power that they can't see it?
I think that's a big part of it in this situation. You got to remember, Joe Biden has been in Congress, has been in politics since he was 28 years old. That's when he was elected to the Senate. He's ran for president 3 times, and then the third time was a charm. He finally got to this position. I mean, after 50 years in politics and running 3 times for president, you don't give up that mantle of power that easily. I can understand that. He needs to. I think a part of Jill Biden, why she doesn't throw in the towel for him, I think she's looking out for his legacy like a lot of political wives do, and don't want her husband, the president, to go down in history as someone who resigned from office like Richard Nixon did because of his mental faculties. I think she's trying to protect his legacy more than anything. It seems cruel because we're witnessing his daily decline. He's getting more and more worse. And we know if President Biden is elected president, there is no way that he's going to finish another 4-year term. He's either going to, unfortunately, pass in office, or after the first couple of years, he's going to pass it on to Kamala Harris. And that's the nightmare we all want to avoid.
That's frightening.
Chris, talk to us. We've heard so much from the liberal media side about the latest trip that they're on is that the Hunter Biden case is all politically motivated and all, sort of like a case we saw wrap up about a week ago and all. Your take on that and where they're all coming at from that thing?
I am sick to death of that argument that they're trying to use, that's saying, the administration, Joe Biden's Justice Department is not going after President Trump because, look, he's going after his own son. Of course he is. I mean, there would be even more of an uproar if Joe Biden's son got lenient treatment, or if Joe Biden said in advance that he was going to pardon his son. So when they keep trying to say that that's some type of indication because Hunter Biden's being prosecuted, that there's not a two-tier justice system, I think that's completely BS. There would be even more furor if they did try to protect him. So I don't buy that argument at all. I wish they would stop using it personally.
Chris, I want to play something for you that has really caused a firestorm on the left. Of course, they're all over the fact we have a biased Supreme Court judge and he's exposed his conservatism. This is a sort of an undercover lefty that infiltrated the Supreme Court Historical Society meeting. And this little exchange that she had with Alito has gone viral.
Argument. Like, people in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that, to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
So it really, this was at the end of this was in the middle of a discussion where she approaches him and says, she's posing as a conservative, right? To get his trust, to gain his trust, to get him to open up. Sounds like a little reception before the actual dinner. And, Justice Alito, things are so polarized. What can we do? We need more morality. She's speaking like you or I or, anyone in the MAGA movement might say to him. And he basically says, well, one side or the other is going to win. And he just references that he agrees with her that we need to return to godliness. The left has painted this as a return to Christianity. I would maintain that's not what he said. Your thoughts?
Well, the left is trying to paint people that believe in traditional values, who believe in pro-life, as Christian nationalists. That's the new term that they have coined. People quoting the Bible, quoting the founding fathers, quoting the Bible in our founding documents. They equate that with Christian nationalism, and they're trying to pit us against each other and make us fear each other, and think that the right wants to create a theocracy, wants a Iranian-style government. That's not what we want at all. We just want what the country used to be, where people had morality and people had morals and people believed that human life was sacred. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's all over our institutional buildings, for crying out loud. It's literally etched in stone as something that, and Chris, how many of the founding fathers in one way or another said, you cannot have the freedom that is engendered in our constitutional republic without some moral construct. Where does moral construct come from? It comes from the natural law born of a supernatural God, right? Yeah. And this is not, like you say, why can't the left just accept that if they're not worshiping a Christian God, if they're not worshiping the same God that Justice Alito, he's just referencing, I think, a historical fact. And it's just blowing up over this.
And I've used that quote. You're quoting President George Washington. That's something that he said. I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said that you cannot have a prosperous, thriving society without a moral society. And, we're seeing that now. We have a prosperous society, but the morality of our society is in deep decline. And I don't think you have to look very far. The Roman Empire and other great empires that have been around, that once they lose their morality, it's a quick descent into your country being no more.
Yeah. Last question for you, Chris. It's interesting to look at the aggregator sites on the polling results after the conviction. On the right, places like Citizen Free Press and others, they're pointing out to polls like the 538 poll, the Emerson poll, the Fox News poll that came out after that. It didn't seem to really move the needle at all. If anything, maybe in some instances, Trump gained a little bit. Drudge Report, on the other hand, points to a YouGov poll, some other minor polls that say, well, it looks like things are tightening up a bit, including the African-American, vote. Now that, the devil's in the details, right? Registered voters, likely voters, all that. What is your synthesis of thus far? What have those convictions done in terms of the body politic and their thoughts about Trump, thumbs up or thumbs down?
We talked about that CBS YouGov poll yesterday on the show. It showed basically Joe Biden and President Trump in a tie. I think Trump was leading 50-49. But then if you look at the swing states in that poll, Biden was leading 50-49. But the interesting thing in that poll that it showed only 28% of those respondents said that Donald Trump's conviction affected the way that they thought. So, look, Trump is doing very well. He has had a 6-7 point lead in these aggregate polls. I think we would be foolish to believe that Trump is going to run away with this and it's going to be, 6-7 point lead until November. The race is going to tighten up, but I think the fundamentals are in Trump's favor when it comes to the economy, when it comes to people not being satisfied with where they are in their life right now. So I think when you look at that, and you remember what James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid, that is what elections come down to. I think Trump and I think Republicans are in good shape. Polls tightening up right now a little bit doesn't worry me.
What do you imagine is going to be the prepared answer for the first time on the debate when Joe Biden references the convictions? Hey, my opponent, a convicted felon. What do you think they're conjuring up on the Trump team for a response?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be very well prepared for it. If I had to guess, knowing President Trump's temperament and his personality, I think he will start bringing up the Joe Biden crime family, all the allegations against him and Hunter, and he'll try to use that to equalize the playing field, even though there isn't any convictions on that side yet. But there is, as you know, and as our listeners know, there is a lot of smoke.
No, you're right.
But we haven't seen the fire yet.
Yeah, maybe something along the lines of my opponent, an unconvicted felon.
Exactly.
I don't know, because you're right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Well, we'll follow it and see what happens, Chris. We'll see if Joe makes it to the debate, because he is deteriorating rapidly. Chris, always enjoy the conversation. Thanks so much. And folks, you can hear Chris every weekday afternoon on our sister stations, one of our great conservative
basically sold out.
Well, that was big bucks David Sachs the other day after a huge fundraiser in, the bluest of blue jurisdictions out in California, not California, Missouri, producer Hannah.
Yeah, not the good California.
No, the blue, lefty, progressive California. And he had hoped to raise $5 million, and I think what John came out with $12 million, and what was it? Tickets were $300,000 a plate. I don't know, John. Could
you go back for seconds?
Yeah, I know you wanted to buy a table, but just you and your wife went. I know how that goes, but
that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd invite me, but this I think embodies a movement. You're seeing big tech, who was totally in the pocket of the Democrats for so long. Or should we say the other way around? The Democrats and Joe Biden have been in the pocket of big tech, and things are changing. And then Sachs put out a tweet that, boy, if you ever wanted, ladies and gentlemen, to just sort of get a concise answer to, if this is the same as if you're an apologist for the faith, for the Christian faith. And this is an analogy as an apologist for why you should not vote for Joe, but vote for Trump. His post of a few days ago, David Sachs, is amazing. Now, he's a big AI tech guy. But he wrote a post.
Artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah, not artificial insemination.
Yeah.
You're right.
He could be both. We don't know.
why I'm backing President Trump. And he goes through issue by issue. He said, over the last couple of years, I've hosted events for Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., several congressional figures in both major parties. Today, I'm giving my endorsement to our 45th President Trump. Okay, so he goes through one, the economy. Biden took over an economy that was already recovering. Demand had roared back. Employment had recovered. He chose to keep priming the pump with unnecessary COVID stimulus. Okay, that's that. He goes on. As a result of Biden's inflation, average Americans have lost roughly a fifth of their purchasing power, okay? Growth has slowed from 3.4% last quarter of 23 to an anemic 1.3% in the first quarter of this year. Okay, number two, foreign policy, Ukraine war. Trump left office with ISIS defeated. Abraham Accords signed. No new wars raging on the global stage. 3.5 years later, the world's on fire. President Biden has made several strategic choices that have contributed to this situation, and he unpacks it further. Number three, the border. He goes through that. Number four, lawfare. A bedrock of political stability we've enjoyed in America over the last 250 years is that we don't accept attempts to jail political opponents in order to win an election. There you go. I mean, one after another. time. And I was trying to locate the exact marker on something that I was so glad to see it.
Promoted.
So the other day, I came across a statement by the American College of Pediatricians. Now, this is a group of very conservative pediatricians. This is not the mainstream, pediatric society. I think, they're the AAP, I think. But they have come out with a statement calling the Doctors Protecting Children declaration. And I just wanted you to hear this, the leader of this group, Dr. Simons, and what she had to say, because I think it's important in this time of moral relativism, the recognition that, there are absolute truths. There is right, there is wrong. We may not know the truth at this moment. We may think, as science often finds, well, we think we know how process A or B or C works, but it turns out there's actually process D that explains how, the sun rises and falls in the Marsh, whatever. But the truth does exist. There is true, there is false, there is right, there is wrong. There are biologic realities and there are biological anomalies. And here's just a little bit of the statement from the American College of Pediatricians on this whole woke transitioning movement.
The medical organizations in the United States. Despite recent revelations from the leaked WPATH files and the recent release of the final report from the CAS review, these medical organizations have not changed course. So we are calling on these medical organizations of the United States, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Endocrine Society, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry to follow the science and their European colleagues and immediately stop the promotion of social affirmation, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children and adolescents who experience distress over their biological sex.
So she goes on. But this has made a lot of waves in social media and frankly, throughout the medical community. These doctors are being demonized. Doctors that don't drink the Kool-Aid on the party line, that, young people who have gender discomfort. And that's a reality. That's a reality of this time in a tween's life and sometimes earlier. It happens. We realize that.
It's an uncomfortable time of life anyways.
It is for all of us. I think if you look back to that time, and it is not in these individuals' interest, and doctors and the medical community is supposed to act in behalf and in the interest of and always trying to serve the best interest of the patient. Which is why if you come in and you want more of your narcotic for your pain, but you're not using it for your pain, and your doctor knows that, your doctor's not telling you he's not or she's not going to write that prescription because they don't like you or they're being judgmental. They need to look out for you. They need to prevent you from becoming an addict to this, dependent on that, whatever. You see what I mean? And to tell a child who is being told sometimes by their school officials, people in authority, they're seeing it, on their social media, that if they're having discomfort, this is the way to solve it, to lean into that discomfort and to request that change. Well, I think cooler heads need to prevail because that it doesn't serve the best interests of at least 90%, if not more, of these kids, 95%.
Well, and that's why I wish it was less of an all or nothing type of thing right out of the gate. If a kid comes to you and says that they're feeling that way, try out things that are temporary and can be reversed, like clothing, if they want to use different pronouns, whatever, you can trial those things out and reverse them easily rather than going down a medical route that the kid might regret a year down the road when they realize that was just maybe a phase or they tried it out and decided it wasn't for them.
And, this submits these kids, especially once they go down the surgical pathway, this submits them to incredible numbers of revisionist surgeries in many cases, particularly when you try to change boy parts to girl parts. Oh, my goodness. It's just, And I've seen the pictures of the complications. I have actually, seen some patients that have struggled with the complications of this. And this is not a matter of hating these people or judging them as somehow miscreants and, what's the matter? These people are mentally ill. They don't have their biological, wits about them, and they need to get counseling. They need to get real psychiatric care. Wasn't there a book like 20 years ago or so that was on the bestseller list? It was by some doctor, and she wrote a whole book on the political correctness in the healthcare industry, especially at the doctor level. Yeah. And now I think they'd probably be using the phrase DEI in it. Yeah. You know what I love? There's another thing that just frosts me all the time. Over the last 25 years or so, you'll hear this term used by docs and by researchers, evidence-based medicine. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I admit that. I'm still not clear what that really means. I've studied studies. I've applied the findings of studies. I've tried to discern what is best in view of the patient's condition and the studies for years, for over 30 years. That's called, the evidence is the study. The patient needs the application of the evidence the study provides. I thought that's what I learned. It's just good old medicine. The problem is a lot of evidence-based medicine is now coming around to, in a way, like you say, John, political correctness. And on the other hand, evidence-based medicine, essentially, I'll boil it down, it talks about if 100 people with, condition X come in, our studies have affirmed that this is the algorithm which they need to be treated. This is the recipe to use. Well, guess what? There's this thing called 95% confidence limits. There's this thing called, the bell curve. There's also this empirically true and growing movement called pharmacogenomics. What does that mean? We have individual responses and metabolism to various medicines. I've had people tell me when I give them an antihistamine, it jacks them up. Now, how many out there of you take Benadryl and you get all fired up and it's like Hunter Biden doing cocaine? No, it puts you to sleep. But these people aren't crazy, but they are. The evidence-based medicine people would say, well, I'm sorry, that's just not, you have to give them. My point is, medicine has become pretty much an industrialized, widgetized pursuit. And those who fail to recognize that sometimes everyone isn't a square peg going in the square hole. Some people are round pegs, and there are exceptions, and we have to recognize that, and we have to have the integrity to realize that.
How do you relate this back to your med school 101 and the Hippocratic Oath that says first do no harm? Right. Yeah. And sadly, many people, by just following algorithmic medicine, and don't get me wrong, there are places where it makes a ton of sense. I had a bad lens replaced in my eye by Dr. Hasen a few months ago. Missouri Eye Consultants did a fabulous job. That I want it to be pretty much widget. I want that to be pretty much a production line thing, because it's one after another. You do the same thing. Yeah, you have to be ready for exceptions. But when it comes to a patient that presents with a complex series of problems, you can't always just apply a one-size-fits-all. And sometimes that's what evidence-based medicine does. And in this day of the 7-minute visit, where you get 7 minutes, 10 minutes with the doc maybe. If that. And then the docs have to spend another 10, 15, 20 minutes documenting it. They have to follow some recipes. But,
I'll just give one example of a medicine that, to your point about, each person's different. Diabetes medications cause all sorts of side effects to certain people, but to others it does not. Metformin can be absolutely debilitating to certain people, but others it cannot. So, it depends.
And look, I'm not dissing academic medicine. We have a great academic institution here. I graduated from one down the street over at WashU down in St. Louis. And they do great work, but I think sometimes to to try to generalize. To me, it's almost like racism, you know? Just because a black kid shoots a black kid in North Columbia doesn't mean all black people are violent, right? Well, just because, you know, one particular antibiotic works for 95% of whatever, you know, process you're talking about doesn't mean that in this particular case it's going to, and you may have to flex and do something different. So it's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I just think that we've become, in our medical judgment, I think that's what's happened with this trans movement. And we saw how the Europeans went there. And now they're running away from it because they realized they were doing more harm than good to many of these kids. And it's just atrocious what happens in some of these cases. But guess what? We saw the tapes that the Daily Wire exposed down in Nashville at Vanderbilt, where the doctor stood up there and said, you know, there's a lot of revenue that comes from these surgeries. You know, I mean, she as much admitted that's part of the equation. That's criminal in my calculation.
What about the stories we've seen over the years about, you know, it's a touchy subject, but preferential treatment, you know, call it what it is, preferential treatment of patients of color in some, especially big city hospitals.
Preferential or discriminatory?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. However you want to state it.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk. I walked away from an American College of OBGYN thing, but there was a medical student or whatever, and it was a DEI thing about how there's intrinsic bias and how black women don't get the same care in labor and they have higher mortality rates and this and that. You know what? There are certain diseases that accrue to certain populations, and it may be a social determinant. It may be that they haven't gotten care. That doesn't mean that the doctor caring for them at the clinic doesn't care about their hypertension. Maybe they couldn't make it to the clinic. Maybe they couldn't afford to pay the copay. That's not an intrinsic bias. But we are now medical professionals are being accused of somehow treating people based on their race or their belief or whatever because of some intrinsic bias. That is just an absurd accusation, at least for myself and the people I know and the doctors I deal with. You deal with each person as they come to you. In fact, I take people that I know come from marginalized environments. Maybe they've lost a job. Maybe they came from a broken family. They had childhood. I spend more time with those people. Maybe I'm discriminating against the so-called privilege. I don't know. You just deal with people as they come. Isn't that the way we deal with one another every day on a one-to-one basis?
That's supposed to be. We hear the word equity so much, and that means what? Treat people equally.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. Well, we gotta move across to what's hot with Hannah. When we come back after that, though, we're going to be talking with Pat Thomas because there was a Republican meeting here in Columbia. We'll be doing that, and we'll be following this execution that's going to be coming up, I guess, tonight. And Brian will be reporting on that. He's
Interesting happened at Zimmer Communications yesterday. John, did you hear about this?
Did you hear about it, John?
I'm not at liberty to divulge that information.
But this story, of course, it's a Florida man story. It combines kind of what happened yesterday at Zimmer with the Florida man story that we all love so much. It involves an 18-year-old who was really beefing with his brother, okay, as brothers do. One of the ways he decided to get back at his brother over their, quote, domestic dispute, as the, cops put it, he decided to wear an adult diaper for a couple days, and he threw it at his brother one day when he was mad at him. So he got arrested for that. That is assault. Fun fact. And that Florida man at the ripe old age of 18 is facing charges for throwing the contents of his diapers at his brother.
Is that under the assault statutes or what? I mean, what would that be?
Yeah, assault.
Will this be a misdemeanor or a felony?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to stay tuned. I'll follow the story.
How old are these people?
The gentleman who was charged was 18.
Wow.
And again, I repeat, Florida man story, because where else would this come from?
Yeah. Maybe
and
it was.
And the parallel here is, man, don't go into Shags and Trevor's KCMQ studio if you're not welcome.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Odd story. A woman pulled up a pickup truck yesterday while we were on the air outside just in front of the studios here and opened the doors and had she did the Biden right there.
Yeah.
And then picked it up and put it in a trash bag, put it in the dumpster down the parking lot and drove off.
Yeah, so that's anyone in the building is talking about right now.
Well, yeah, they were telling me I came out after the show and
we missed a lot, yeah.
One of the guys were like, wow, you guys should have covered this. It was a live event. I'm like, no, we got better things to cover.
Yeah, boy. We'll do that. We'll just watch the D-Day remembrance or something.
Probably a person who's not, who's probably struggling with some kind of mental, problem. So hope she gets some help. Hey, we know that if you want to witness someone who's struggling with their trying to lead the free world and yet, debate Donald Trump, you'll want to come out and see how that works out.
I think he's struggling with far simpler tasks
at Lakeside,
as well. Yeah.
At Lakeside Ashland on the 27th, Thursday the 27th. Make sure you check out our Facebook page or the app or, of course, 939theeagle.com or KWS.com. And you can register there because I know that there are limited spots, but it'll be a great time. We've got a bust of Donald Trump. communication line here, text or phone, is 573-874-9390. And I think as we look at the landscape this political season, whether it's on the national scene or whether it's the state scene, sometimes the local scene, we look at a fair amount of polarization within the GOP and trying to figure out, when we look at what happened at the state Republican convention, and I mean, you know, you got the Freedom Caucus people in the Senate and the non-Freedom Caucus people, and people can't get along. And
it's very divided. I think we all need to, hold hands and sing Kumbaya for a little bit.
And so we thought we'd check in with Pat Thomas, State Committeewoman, Senate District 6. And because Pat's, of course, deeply involved in all these issues and goes to these meetings and so I'm hoping, Pat, welcome into the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm hoping you can sort of pull back the curtain on, sort of what's going on and what the diagnosis is, and
dumb it down for us, Pat.
And what your prescription might be. I mean, if there's a prescription for getting coalescence as we head into a very pivotal election season at all levels, local, state, federal.
Well, I think the issue that came up on Saturday was just one example that we have a very actual strict set of guidelines that come to us from the National Committee, and one of those was that by last fall, we had to have passed a call to convention. And in that call, laid out exactly how delegates would be selected and platforms will be passed and things will be handled. And for whatever reason, in May at the convention that I didn't attend, wasn't privy to be on a slate because of things that happened here locally, those items on the agenda didn't get finished. And so someone came to the state committee and they asked, there's 68 members, and they asked us if we would, for the first time ever, take up and pass the draft platform with the amendments that they had approved that day. Well, people in the room, and again, there was a large number of people in the gallery who felt throughout the voting portion of the day that their voices should be heard, but they did put an end to that. But one of the things that kept coming up was people kept saying, well, this is unprecedented, and do we want to really go down this road for the future? And what if then some random group at some random February wanted to change the platform instead of the 900 to 1,000 delegates that are usually changing the platform every 4 years? Now, clearing all of that away, here's where we are. The 2020 platform stands. We have a platform. But like we've seen with our state constitution, our party platform has gotten down into the weeds where they want to use it as a document to tell people how to write legislation. The party platform was ideally supposed to be like a constitution where it was just an overarching umbrella of ideas to get us through and kind of define what our party is. And so the ultimate outcome was on Saturday, by a vote of 44-18, we decided that no, we can live with the 2020 platform. We're not going to go backwards. We're not going to change those things. Had we voted to adopt that platform, many of us firmly believe we would have put the number of Missouri delegates at risk. The RNC could have said to us, you made a change, you did something and adopted an item outside the call to convention, and therefore we're not going to accept any number of percentage of delegates. For many people, being a delegate to a national convention is a lifetime honor, something they've wanted to do. It's a bucket list thing. And frankly, I'm not willing, whether it's myself, and I'm not a delegate this year, or other people, to put those things at risk when we have a document in place that is good.
Pat, we've seen some of this kind of bumping of heads, for lack of a better term, in the county caucuses over this past year. I mean, suburban St. Louis things started getting pushed, and the chairman was able to kind of rein it back in. We saw the same thing in Cole County and all. Is there a parallel here to this whole mindset, I guess?
Well, it appears that the mindset is, if I can just be louder than you, I must be right. And if I have 5 people in a room and they're all the loudest, we must be right. Well, they appear to be living in a vacuum, because 80% people may vote with Republicans in Cole County, but they don't get involved in the day-to-day politics. And so for some reason, there's often situations we find ourselves in, whether it's the Cole County caucus or Cole County Central Committee or other places where they think the rules and the procedures don't apply to them. And if they can just be louder, they're going to take over. And what I'm here to say is I'm tired of the name calling. I want everyone to work together to win and win in November. And we don't do that if we continue to divide ourselves. We will hit the skid row of Kansas faster than Kansas did, where it was taken over and has a Democratic governor, if we don't stop and reevaluate the path that we're on.
And nobody wants to be like Kansas.
Kansas is bad.
Pat, let me play a little bit of devil's advocate just for the sake of discussion, because a lot of people, I think, look at the political scene. You've heard the terms uniparty, rhino, which is something that I abhor. But I think at some point, if you look at our very founding in this country, there is a restlessness when things that should be getting done aren't getting done, when there's a perception that the go along to get along, or get along to go along to get along philosophy, which I think is a double-edged sword of conservative people, right? They tend to be good-minded people, decent people that want to do the right thing and want to compromise. It seems like if you look at the landscape politically, at least at the national scene, and some would maintain at the state scene, fair-minded, decent people on the right side of the political spectrum have given and given and given, and we've slid more and more and more to the left. And so, as I look at it from sort of an outsider standpoint, I'm not an insider in politics, and as I talk to people who are frustrated looking at the way our country and our state has gone, with more and more government, more and more involvement in our lives, sometimes for the right stated, from the right stated purpose, right? Well, we want to have people have better health. Well, let's give them health care. George Bush, we want to have people have better drugs. Let's give them Medicare Part D. He was a Republican. And you see what happens. And I think so. Do people who are those 80, 90% of the, I'll call them the mainstream, the establishment, the process-oriented Republicans, do they hear the voices of those who are getting frustrated that, wow, when are we going to start acting like the Democrats and we've got the power? By God, put the pedal to the metal and let's get some things done that are truly conservative, truly deregulatory, truly small government, truly get out of the people's way. Do you see what I'm saying? Is this boisterous, rebellious movement a symptom of something that needs to be changed within the GOP party?
Well, they're being heard, but I would offer a counter to that. They're being heard, but they don't often understand the process to fix what they want. Mm-hmm. An example is for the last 5 or 6 years, we've routinely in the legislature tried to say, let's move all of these taxing ballot issues to August or November, right? None of us like taxes, and we want to watch how often they're going up. And if we put them all on a single ballot, everybody would have a fair shake at knowing exactly how much that would impact their local taxes, whether it be real estate, property tax, whatever. Mm-hmm. And because it didn't go with something that someone wanted, they wouldn't take the small win.
Ah, okay. Good point. Good point. Yeah. Because that is a design of our constitutional process, is for incremental moves, right? Rather than quantum moves. Yeah. Right. I get it. Yeah.
But when you wait this long, Randy, this is also why we see outside groups insist on putting IP and other things on ballots, because frankly, they haven't been able to get the legislature to move.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Pat Thomas is with us, a state committeewoman. Do you think that just as we've seen a lot of the sometimes Trumpers, even a few of the never Trumpers, some of the always Haleys coming to the Trump side, just in terms of the presidential race, do you think that there is going to be coalescence and that a lot of these bygones will be bygones when it comes to, division within the state party and beyond?
I don't think that the problem is the Trumpers, and I don't think it's the never Trumpers. I think it's a more local issue. And I think it's that there's a niche of consultants and a niche of political grifters, for lack of a better term, who found a way to take an issue, blow it up beyond proportion, beyond what most people even think should be done. And that's how they make their money and they keep their organizations afloat. Ah,
that is some serious insider information there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hay to be made as long as there's controversy and uncertainty. The consultants, Stephanie's not here, but she's heard me say it when she is here. The attorneys, the consultants, the campaign managers, they have a lot. They got to keep the boil going, right?
Job security.
Yeah. All right. Pat,
you've been right in the middle of it, watching this whole thing. What transpired in the Senate especially. I mean, we had Senator Huff on the air with us repeatedly over the session and all. Do you think once we get past this election year that some of that will kind of spin back for the 2025 session, especially on the Senate side?
Well, I think it depends on these primaries. Missouri's become more and more of a primary state in certain seats. And so I think you have, again, consultants, people who want to get certain issues accomplished, and they're going to go out and they're going to gin people up to just vote for the guy who's only going to keep a certain issue ginned up or whatever. And I think if we don't hear from people who say, look, I want things accomplished, I want government to govern in a respectable, modern way, in a manner that is respectful of each other, move forward, then I think we get the same thing again. If we see people that elect people who want to be respectful and let government govern on the few things that government should do and do well, then I think you'll see a change in January. I think a large part of that's going to be decided in August.
So, assuming that majority control is maintained to some robust amount, you're looking forward to a brighter session next year.
I'm kind of a Pollyanna. I always think things are going to be better. Just because thinking it could be any worse, you probably wouldn't want to go to work.
There she is, Pat Thomas, with her rose-colored glasses on. Hey, Pat, thank you so much. And I appreciate a lot of times people don't know, but Pat is filling us in with some of
York. Story of two male penguins who parented a baby penguin became an award-winning and often banned children's book called And Tango Makes Three. Well, now we've learned that the Smithsonian National Zoo in D.C., not to be outdone, has a gay couple of anteaters. Manning and Cayenne were paired together to breed. They honestly were fast friends, said the assistant curator, and said, we saw them rolling around and thought that was really encouraging. Great breeding behavior. 2 years went by. Cayenne hadn't gotten pregnant, so they brought in a reproductive specialist to examine them and said, well, the issue is these are not ovaries, they're testes on this one.
How embarrassing.
That kind of tracks along with your stingray, I guess.
Yeah.
But Manny and Cayenne have continued their bond, turned out to be a bromance for the ages. Apparently just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to queerness in the animal world. Let's see. Some deer are non-binary. In the mammal world, deer have a third gender called velvet horns, males who never shed their velvet, and their testicles never fully develop. And, of course, the clownfish can change sex once they get big enough. It allows them to avoid conflict over access to the female. For the rest of it, sounds like Nemo found a little more than he was originally looking for. And now you know the rest of that story.
Wow.
A fishy story.
Yeah, so there are those anomalies in the natural world, right? But,
parthenogenesis with the lizards, right?
Yeah, and but I think we recognize that as such. We don't. It's just a reality. It's a part of the natural order, right? But I think in order to extend the species, it's difficult, especially in mammalian species, to imagine that that's going to work out over the long run, right? If that becomes the norm, right?
Things get a whole lot less crowded real quick, don't they?
You're right. Hey, time for AI. Good timing for AI to come in, right? Because we don't need as many folks around to do the work that AI is going to take over. Have you been monitoring the AI when people? I don't have any on hand right here, but when people ask questions of AI and they're getting some pretty kooky answers, AI is not ready for prime time in all places. I mean,
and I think most people know that.
Yeah.
It's still fun to play with.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it can be a good starting point.
Hannah, how are your three children and and the awards you've received for being an award-winning black journalist?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
yes.
It's going great. Going great.
I think that was really an instructive conversation with Pat. I think there's this healthy tension. I think we see it on the Democrat side, right? We saw it with the Squad versus the rest of the Democrat Party, and I think that they actually brought the Democrat Party more to their side. They kicking and screaming, but eventually you saw a lot of things get through that were. I mean, would we have thought 6 years ago, 5 years ago, that the Green New Deal was a reality? No, I'm thinking we're part of the way there, right?
Well, like I brought up with Pat, with these county caucuses, it got pretty rowdy. They were kind of doing the same thing that the Missouri Senate was, but I mean, people bumped some heads and wanted to change the direction of the party at the caucuses, and like we said, the individuals who were cheering the individual ones had to grab hold and kind of rein things in a little bit.
And, I mean, that's just the nature of political scene. We see it abroad. We see it in South America. We see, you've seen those things in parliaments where people start, getting in one another's face.
Throwing punches in Indonesia, that kind of stuff.
Well, remember during the flap over McCarthy, remember when, was it he and Gates got into it? And I mean,
they were going to go outside.
So I don't know. That's just the human experience, right? Is to get contentious now and then. But in the end, I guess you do have to recognize some common process by which we're going to move forward. That we being whatever group you're talking about, and how do you influence that group to come more in your direction? I think what we've learned is it's probably not helpful to be the bull in the china shop, right? There's more effective ways of doing that.
There are other ways to resolve your differences other than,
yard, but that doesn't work. Okay, national. and
that was really smooth, Doc. That was really smooth.
I'm kidding you. We always look forward to these discussions because as I've said, I really believe that the small business community is the really the bellwether of where this economy is going at really all levels, and I think an early indicator system. So, Brad, with that as a preview, what's going on this month?
As a matter of fact, Randy, it makes up 40% of the GDP of this country. So it's a huge factor in our economy. And as you said, it's sort of so goes small business, so goes the nation. Yep. And so we've been doing the NFIB Small Business Economic Trend Survey since the 70s, and it's really become a very, very important survey. Even among the geeky establishments of the economists, they look at it and they know that it's credible, and I know that a lot of the politicians and whatnot look at it too, because it is a pretty good bellwether for what's going to happen in the next 6 months. I was going to ask you guys, because this is such an esteemed group, I know that you'll probably know the answer to this, but what would you guys say is one of the biggest hobgoblins of small business? Not necessarily right now, but I mean overall in running a business. What would you say is one of the biggest issues?
I know what it is. I can speak from my perspective. It's okay. It's regulations.
Okay, that's a big one. Anybody else, John? Anybody else?
Workforce.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
I don't know.
Hannah, have you got a guess?
I got
Actually,
nothing.
one of the biggest problems that small business people have is uncertainty.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Uncertainty is one of the biggest problems that we have out there. And I think if you look at the if you look at the NFIB Small Business Economic Trend Survey, uncertainty weaves its way in and out of every one of these we've done in the last 2 or 3 years. Because when you don't know in 6 months what you're going to be charging for your product, you don't know what the sales are going to be like, you have no idea if you're going to have enough people to work for you or how many people are going to leave you, for instance. All of those things are what drives small business people crazy. I've had them say, if you're going to raise my taxes, I get it. I want to know how much it is. If you're going to do this or you're going to do that or you're going to regulate this or you're going to regulate that, I don't like it, but I want to know what it's going to be. And I think when you look at the Economic Trend Survey, which did tick up a little bit as far as your expectations are improving in the next 6 months, I think that's really one of the big things that we're looking at right now. And there's some other big factors involved. We got this election coming up. And I think maybe a lot of small businesses are kind of holding their horses and saying, I really kind of want to expand the business, but I'm waiting to see what's going to happen both on the local and the national level as far as the next election is concerned. So the numbers this month didn't change a whole lot. When on the question of expecting the economy to improve, it went up just about 0.8. So it went up some. I'm sorry, it went up 7. It went up a little bit. But the other thing that is a little discerning is the job openings. We went from 40 to 42% of our membership that says that they have jobs that they cannot fill. And so that's not the direction that we really want to see. We wanted to see that. I mean, the average for 50 years is like 26%. So it's still way, way up there. And although the Economic Trends Survey has gone up, it is still historically low compared to the last 50 years. So, and then you still have inflation as the number one problem, according to the May survey. So, if you take all of that together, it's still not a very rosy picture, because we've still got 42% of our members that still have jobs out there that they can't fill. 60% of them actually in May tried to hire somebody, and guess what? 85% of the 60% couldn't find anybody. So what happens when you can't find the people that you need? What do? You have to raise the compensation. You've got to sweeten the pot some more. And what does that lead to? That leads to inflation. So, it's kind of a dog chasing his tail and never catching it.
We seem
right
to have.
Now we're in a spot where it just seems like we're in this sort of this rut. The only thing that's keeping us out of big trouble is the fact people keep buying stuff, which doesn't make any sense at all. Usually in the economy, when prices go up, people start to throttle back a little bit on their purchasing, and they have a little, but not that much.
Well,
So,
I think, Brad, that may have been, I'm just looking at the hot off the press. In fact, the ink on my computer is not dry yet. In case you didn't know that, Hannah, but there's ink on the computer. It's not dry yet. And I'm looking at this report on NFIB.com on the, from the national folks that have put out this press release. Interesting stuff. The frequency of reports of positive profit trends was a net negative 30%, 3 points worse than April. Among owners reporting lower profits, here's what you were relating to. It's coming. 32% blamed weaker sales, 15% the rise in the cost of materials, labor cost another 14%, lower selling prices to gain market share. I think this thing is winding down. I think no matter what they say about, the unemployment numbers came out last week and employment was up. If you drill down into it, most of the jobs being created are part-time jobs. Why are business people doing part-time jobs? They can't afford to provide all of the benefits and hire full-time workers. A part of that, doesn't that reflect the uncertainty you were talking about? It's like, wow, I don't want to throw in with a full-time, 40-hour work week for 48 weeks or 50 weeks a year person when I'm not sure if I'm going to need them in a few months, Brad. Am I right or wrong there?
No, you hit the nail right on the head. And the other thing too, Randy, is I'm looking at the industries by percentage of job openings, and if you look at, although it's better than it was in May of 2023, but if you look at the skilled area, like your construction, manufacturing, transportation, so we said 42% overall, but if you're looking at construction, you're looking at 54% can't find people. Manufacturing is 52, transportation is 52, and services is 50. So I mean that's way above your overall 42. And so you wonder why houses are costing more to build. And also we're seeing some ticks up in the finances. You're seeing interest rates going up. So I can't imagine that probably the home buying, I just can't imagine that that's not going to cool off here at some point, where you're going to see home inventories maybe go back up. You're going to see rents perhaps come back down a little bit. But I just still think that people are sitting out there going, man, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. So,
Brad, something that you brought up with us before, and that's sort of, I don't know how to put it, but the deal that small businesses, Missouri and elsewhere, have balancing growth and quality. If you want to grow, well, that means you're the business owner and you've got to work long hours, and then your good employees, you got to ask them to do the same thing or find a way to cut corners. Man, how do you balance that?
It's hard. I mean, go in and talk to your kiosks, guys. Those kiosks, they don't need overtime. They don't need to go on vacations. And I think if you're looking at capital expenses, some of the capital expenses you're seeing, even within this survey, happen to deal with the restaurant industry and some other things where automation is a real thing. And automation is, John, the balance, if you will, because they're not finding anybody that wants to come in and do whatever jobs that they've got. And it may just be that long term, that big expense of putting that piece of equipment in actually will save the money in the long run. So it's it's a situation that we're looking at right now, and it's called the Economic Trends Survey. Well, the trends, it looks like in the last 5 to 6 months is sort of a hunker down, but it's not positive. In my mind, it's certainly not positive.
Brad Jones, again, is our guest, NFIB Missouri Director. I want to make sure on the numbers, because a month ago we were at 40% of your members had jobs they cannot fill. So that's gone up to 42? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's jumped up. And this is the concern. The Rankin Technical College that just opened, they're trying to fill a lot of these open positions your members have. What kind of impact will that have in time frame on that?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. The folks, those young people that coming out of Rankin are the ones that are helping with this industry percent with job openings in these first three, in the construction, manufacturing, transportation, professional services. Those are the ones that are hurting the most. I think those are the ones that, believe me, are the first in line as far as this economy is concerned in getting jobs. I'm frankly, I'll take that Rankin graduate, and I would imagine they can probably pick where they want to go, what they want to make. I mean, they're in the driver's seat. I see those positions probably going a little faster than your 4-year philosophy degree from your 4-year colleges.
Brad, on the advocacy front, I know that there were several things that were real threats. I mentioned compliance and regulation, right? Those are the handmaidens that ruin us. This whole deal with getting into all the personal information and having to make a personal statement, is that water under the bridge, or is that still out there on the federal level?
No, it's still out there. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things, the FinCEN thing, where they tried to, basically, they want everybody's information, especially for companies under 20. And we are fighting that tooth and nail to see if we can get that reversed. Now, that might be another thing that if the Trump administration came in, I would love to see them, as a first executive order, get rid of that, because I am now, with our podcast, an LLC. So I got to go through the fun of what so many of our thousands and thousands of members get to go through. And that's going to be one of the things we're going to have to fill out. We've got to fill all that stuff out.
Yeah, it's like
back in.
It's like an ethics statement. You have to give them your name, rank, serial number, Social Security, all this personal information. The other issue that's related to that is this small business deduction, right? That's always under threat.
That is the number one issue for NFIB for the next year. We've actually put a committee together within NFIB that will be working to make sure that we can make that permanent. Those are part of the 2017 Trump tax cuts. They affect every LLC.
down a little bit. Why? Almost a third of a point, about 130 points. The S&P down 13 points, or about a quarter of a percentage. Stock futures are slipping. Why? Investors are again getting worried. We just got done talking with Brad Jones about uncertainty. The markets do not like uncertainty, and this whole Fed, strategy. Are they going to reduce some of the rates? When is that going to happen? It keeps getting pushed back. First it was June, then maybe September. Now will it be then? Fed policy meeting, of course, tomorrow. We'll see what happens with that. All the while, we're seeing some movement in the AI sector. Apple executives are explaining and being asked and being held their feet to the fire by some of the AI community. Why is its AI different from competitors? And many are saying the Apple Intelligence on your iPhone, yes, your iPhone may require an upgrade. Doesn't seem to be up to speed, at least from those who are in the know with AI. That's artificial intelligence, producer Hannah, not the other kind of AI.
I appreciate the clarification.
Just want to be clear about that. And Elon Musk is interesting. I don't know if you saw this, but I actually commented back on an Elon Musk Twitter post, an X post, asking his followers and there was a picture of a Tesla smartphone. And the question was, would you buy a Tesla smartphone if it came with Starlink access? And there was another perk, that it came with. And I said, first of all, you got to show me that its features are better than what's available now. And I want to know if it's going to be able to be connected to all of the networks in the same way. Will it have all the 5G capability? Will some networks close it out? So I didn't know that Elon was working on a smartphone, but he works on all that.
But you got to have the iPhone folks cooperate with his platform, too.
That's right. So I don't know. He's threatening an Apple device ban at his companies over an OpenAI partnership. Man, he's playing hardball. But it's fun to watch Elon as he really changes our world with his very interesting mind. That's our Is not an accurate description. I'm going through the text here. I love when you guys are texting, all the thoughts that come across. Rhino is not an accurate description of some Republicans. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and many others. Well, yeah, they're moderate Republicans. My point about Rhino is I think it's not the Democrats love when we just watch us. They love to stand in the corner and watch us self-immolate. I think that, having proper criticism of fellow Republicans or fellow conservatives or fellow Americans is right. But I think rather than name-calling, issue would be the best way to go about it, right? And just talk about, hey, you claim to be a conservative, but yet you're trying to grow government. You claim to be a small government guy, but you want to, expand Medicaid, Medicare. But that's the way to do it. I think it's keep it issues oriented, because the others love when we call one another's name. That's why I don't like the term rhino. I just don't think it's helpful for the overall movement and the cause.
And also, let's not forget what Congressman Luetkemeyer said on this very show just a couple of weeks ago when he was talking about Congress, but it also could apply to a lot of these legislative districts around the state. And he basically said that for some listeners and for some lawmakers, they believe every district is as bright red as their district. Mm-hmm. And for instance, Mike Moon's district in Southwest Missouri, a state senator from Ash Grove, is bright red. Jason Bean down in the Boot Heel, bright red, ruby red. Caleb Rowden's district, well, quite frankly, in Boone County, it was very, very tight. He won primarily because of Cooper County in those elections, and then Cooper County is no longer there. So the point is, Caleb Rowden, yeah, he did vote for Medicaid expansion. You mentioned Medicaid expansion, but the voters in his district wanted Medicaid expansion.
Mm-hmm.
It was
That's
one of the
what
few,
you call representative
It was one
government.
of the few counties. Well, most counties did, by the way, vote it down. But anyway, I think that's always worth noting.
I want to talk about this execution in a minute, but I promised to. I think Dr. Phil has. He's a TV guy. He's whatever, but he's getting a little more political these days. And I thought he made an interesting analysis after the convictions of Trump, that sham witch hunt trial up there, which was clearly the first, I guess, full-fledged instance of lawfare we've seen in this country that I know of anyway. But here's what he had to say the other day.
And let's be honest, this is so not just about Trump. If you let your hatred for Donald Trump compromise your ability to find true north on your moral compass, shame on you. If you let your disgust for Biden make you blind to the inevitable consequences of pursuing revenge, then God help the children who will inherit the dystopian nightmare we create. We need leaders who will pledge to end this vicious cycle right now and return us to that safe place where our institutions are no longer bastardized and weaponized, but rather simply serve their intended purpose.
That, to me, is a clarion call for a leader who will bring some respect and some integrity back to the institutions which have been so beat up by virtue of their own misconduct in this country. And it was a real, because the whole discussion about are we hoping that Donald Trump will come in and tit for tat, and start prosecuting guys and gals. I don't know. I don't know where it's all going to end, but it's time for a above the fray, true statesperson, a leader. And I really pray for that in this country at all levels. I really hope that happens this election cycle.
From a historical perspective, and he sounded neither non or bipartisan. And again, I don't know the context on that. From a historical perspective, 1920, Warren G. Harding campaigned on a platform of return to normalcy. Now, if someone campaigned on a platform return to normalcy, first of all, I don't know what normalcy is anymore.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure what it is, but I think for most people it'd be a throwback to how it was with Reagan and Tip O'Neill, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I don't really want to get into a discussion about is capital punishment a good or bad thing, the right or wrong thing to do? But it's going to happen tonight, right, Brian? It's going to happen. And the question is, to me, that's in a way a return to normalcy. I mean, at least there's going to be justice meted out for someone who, when you describe this crime that this Hosier, I just can't imagine what'd you say previously? They had to clean up the spent shell casings
With a shovel.
With a shovel.
John reported that detail. I did not know that, by the way. But no, what I've reported, you are absolutely correct. And John chime in. But John and I both, I mean, it is a horrific case. And it gets a little confusing. So I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible, because there were two people killed. He being David Hosier, the former firefighter, is scheduled to be executed tonight at 6 o'clock by lethal injection for the death of Angela Gilpin. They were having an affair. This is all court documents, and they reference this in the Supreme Court hearing I attended in open court. So we're not saying anything that's not been announced in court. No secret. He was having an affair with Gilpin. She was a married woman. The affair ends, court filings say. Angela reconciles with her husband, Rodney, in August of 2009. She wants to get back with her husband, and they appear to be reconciling. According to the governor's statement yesterday in denying clemency, David Hosier stalked her for weeks, harassed her for weeks. He didn't go into the details, breaks into her apartment on West Main in September 2009. He has a submachine gun. I don't know how many he had 15 guns in the car, according to court documents, and a crowbar, bulletproof vest as well. But he is accused of shooting and killing both of them. So the execution tonight will be for Angela. He was never tried for killing Rodney Gilpin, although it was implied that he did, and the governor even mentions that there. But barring either a federal judge somewhere or the U.S. Supreme Court, basically the only hope he has is to try to get a judge. And he's got this health issue, apparently, some other issues going on with his health. In 2019, they were saying he had a stroke and brain damage, that his brain was dead in places. It would have to take something like that where a judge would have to argue that, executing him could be cruel and unusual punishment, because there is no issue in guilt or innocence here. He never has denied it. It's been more about the health issue. But yes, it was horrible. It'll take place in Bonne Terre. Early execution used to be at midnight. At some point fairly soon, that prison will lock down. They will lock that prison down in Bonne Terre. The counties right now are delivering inmates, but they'll lock it down, and he is in he's at the Bonne Terre prison right now. The DOC website says he's in Potosi. He's not in Potosi. He's in Bonne Terre. And they have they being the state, according to the Supreme Court ruling and in order, they have a 24-hour window. So the defense attorneys are going to just do a flurry of paperwork and try to get that thing stopped. It's an uphill battle, but I've seen him stop before. It can happen.
It's going to be, I don't know, justice finally, after how many years? It's crazy. John, you're reporting on revenues to the state of Missouri, and as I started reading your story and listening, I'm thinking, wow, isn't there some kind of a trigger provision in the law that when we're in the money in Jeff City that maybe the taxpayers get a cut? What's going on?
Well, there's the rub, because Missouri's getting ready to enter the new fiscal year, and that's 1 July with a near record cash surplus. And spending, is below the budgeted amounts, and it's not enough, though, the numbers wise, to trigger the tax cut dependent on that revenue growth. So quickly, the answer to your question, nope, sorry, maybe next time.
And then you're reporting that Governor Parson may call lawmakers back to add new spending because, of course, his budget was pared back a little bit, right? A couple million, I think.
Well, that's that whole supplemental budget discussion,
B with
right,
a billion,
Brian?
Yeah. And then so what does that mean? Because we've heard legislators, when we've interviewed them here, talk about how, and other analysts have said, really the budget was sort of smoke and mirrors, because they may need to come back even before the first of the year and ask for a supplemental for, I think it was Medicaid, that really Medicaid wasn't adequately funded.
Here's the thing on that. This gets really confusing, so I'll try to keep it as simple as possible, because you have revenue estimates, everything. The House and Senate and the governor's office all come up with consensus revenue estimates, and sometimes they all come up with 3 different ones. Sometimes they agree. Most of the time, quite frankly, in years past, they've all been off a little bit in both parties. It's hard to predict that. But we had an interview with one of the state lawmakers not that long ago that suggested that they did not have enough money in the budget for the to take care of Medicaid. And again, that was voter approved. The court has ordered it, so they have to, so it was a 7-0 decision. They have to fund the Medicaid expansion. You can debate the policy all you want. They have to fund it. And there are some that believe he will have to call them back. We'll see the governor on Thursday. Hopefully we'll be able to even talk to him about it. But the I-70 thing's on his mind right now, but they could bring
Well,
it
after
back.
all, we have to protect those ginormous profits of the three contractors that run the Medicaid. So that
the governor did say on the whole supplemental budget thing and his potential for a special session that he's out come first of the year, and he doesn't want to hand this off to his predecessor. So could happen.
I'll say it again. I got to make sure that we protect all of those infrastructures that deny your medications, that deny your care, that deny your testing that your doctors wants to get, so that ginormous profits can be protected. We have to make sure that we fund that, don't you know? I am so upset. I can't tell you. And everyone out there who's in the medical industry knows exactly what I mean. And you patients know exactly what I mean, too, whether it's Medicaid or anything else. The infrastructure that you pay for, and in this case, the state pays for with the three contractors that are contracted to run that, funding these ginormous infrastructures to medically manage your care. I thought doctors and nurses used to do that. But now we've got people in gleaming glass and brick buildings, and sometimes steel and glass buildings, multiple floors of regulatory agencies, going through questionnaires, pre-authorizations, all so that we got to make sure and fund all that, guys. You legislators and Governor Parson, don't let those profits go untouched. Got to protect them. You know my tongue is firmly planted in my cheek. I don't know if I can speak anymore. It's so firmly planted.
I can tell you're frustrated, but there are from the other perspective, there are Democrats who are out there like Jess Piper, who is a former legislative candidate that constantly is on Twitter saying schools have been underfunded and the budget's underfunded. She wants to see more money spent on programs. It is the largest state budget in history. It's about $50 billion. Now, you have to keep in mind some of that is federal money. But the point of the matter is that is the largest budget in state history.
It's a reality. I'm not saying that. I disagree with public funding of health care. I think that should be a privately. But I think that welfare in general is not a good idea. I think that on the back of taxpayers. I think it should be on the back of community organizations, civic organizations, charitable organizations, families, churches. Forget about it. That horse is out of the barn.
Well,
if we're going to have Medicaid, let's not make it a windfall profit center for rationing insurance companies. I'm sorry, that's my only beef.
Yeah,
and there's no innovation. There's zero innovation. Just let's throw. It's like the education cartel. Just throw more money at it. Throw more. How's that working out for you, gang?
I don't know. I have not heard that argument from both sides. But again, whether it's good public policy or not, the bottom line, Randy, is I'm going to say it again. The Missouri Supreme Court ordered the state to fund Medicaid expansion. And when the Missouri Supreme Court orders you to fund Medicaid expansion, you have no choice.
Got to protect those.
You fund
It's the Cheeto dust of the show, if you will.
You know, tomorrow Helene's going to co-host, and we'll talk some health. We're going to do a doctor's
No Cheetos tomorrow.
Well, you know what, though? I hope, remind me to ask Helene about telling people how to prepare her, she calls it edamame, but, I mean, that's a fancy term for basically just the roasted soybeans. Really good.
Aren't they like sugar snap peas, kind of?
Yeah, a little bit. But, I mean, you know what's cool about them? If you sort of have that as a nice side dish as you start your meal, they take long enough to eat, and they're protein-packed enough. Really, very nutritious, and they're tasty. So is whatever you put on the outside. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but remind me to make sure. I don't have a pen here. What did I do with my pen? Yeah, here we go. I got the pen.
You're sitting next to a whole cup full of pens.
I got to write that down. So I remind myself to remind Helene to talk about little like a little appetizer, healthy appetizer. Anyway, we were having these last night, and you know what? I realized that's one technique for eating a little less. Someone asked me about how do you manage portion control? Because, these days in America, that's one of our big problems. We're so prosperous that portions are so big, and it's, relatively, now with Joe Biden inflation, it's not relatively cheap, but it's, compared to the rest of the world, you can eat just a bucket load of food for not a whole lot of money, which is the reason we're having some of the health problems we have. So we're going to talk to her about that, about how to some tips for how to manage portion control. And that's one of them.
So we could do the beef cattle thing, either grass finished or grain finished or now soybean finished.
Soybean finished, yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I have a leftover, and I just wanted to play a little bit of this. I hope this plays. I was listening to Joe Biden's speech the other day, and then there was Clay Travis came out with a compare and contrast. Joe, the plagiarizer, remember we had to withdraw from one of the 80s campaigns, John, because of he was caught plagiarizing?
Never.
Here's Biden versus 40 years earlier, Ronald Reagan at Pointe du Hoc in Normandy.
At last, the hour had come. Dawn, 6th of June, 1944.
At dawn on the morning of the 6th of June, 1944.
225 American Rangers arrived by ship, jumped into the waves and stormed the beach.
225 Rangers jumped off the British landing craft and ran to the bottom of these cliffs.
Gunfire rained above them, but still they kept coming. Nazi grenades thrown from above exploded against the cliffs, but still they kept coming.
The Rangers looked up and saw the enemy soldiers, the edge of the cliffs, shooting down at them with machine guns and throwing grenades. And the American Rangers began to climb.